the dragons can be taken out cost efficiently. You can trade the gold of riflemen for the gold of dragons and you'll be fine. But you cannot trade the gold of riflemen, the gold of mages. You can't trade away the gold of mages. If you don't take out the mages, you won't have an ability to make the riflemen because of flame strike. Or you won't have the ability to do enough damage because of heal. And now look at this. However scary that army was, that Slammer 4 sent over here and completely pinioned the army right here, these 5 dragons aren't going to break into anything. Look at all of these workers healing this tower. Look at these riflemen underneath this watchtower. Look at this base that has 3 watchtowers. Look at this base that has 2 and a full worker line. 5 dragons are scary-ish on an open field, but if you don't have the strongest army, all you have to do is camp by static defense and wait. And now these 6 dragons have nowhere to go that's really threatening. It is totally in the benefit to Jibs for these dragons to even try and take an equal fight. It's completely in his favor. And now we look over here. Now we are seeing that we're getting to the really, really late aspect of the game, and it's getting less and less in Slammer 4's favor because of how expensive his units are. Look, 76 supply to 59 looks scary. But here is what really scares Slammer 4. He has 8 dragons. That's 40 supply. If we take out the dragons, which effectively we, as it might sound, cruel, we basically take out the dragons when we encounter a fight that's on someone else's bases, because they can do damage and harass, sure, and they'll win on the open field because they can be healed and they do pretty good damage, but ultimately they're not going to take a fight at the base of your opponent who has static defense effectively. So for raiding purposes, we can just cross out this 40 supply. So we have 43 supply for Slammer 4 and 71 for Jibs, only 10 of which is tied down in dragons. So 61 over here. 61 versus 43 is a phenomenal shift. Even though it doesn't look like he's favored by supply, in unit effectiveness, Jibs is reigning on the supremeness. Look, this is what Slammer 4 has to do to get some damage done. He can't actually, he can't take the fight to the watchtowers themselves. And this is very wise, because the watchtowers, look, if he attacks the watchtowers, there's no economic damage done, and this buys time for this army to get over here. But if he attacks the workers instead of the watchtower, then he gets kills, and the watchtowers aren't going to be able to just do enough damage fast enough to scare away the dragons. So, something to think about next time you're base raiding. If you're attacking a base with dragons and there's a watchtower, don't attack the watchtower. All you're doing, unless you're in a scenario where you are ending the game, is giving your opponent the capability to get their slower army in position and defend. It is actually much, much better for you. Instead of doing that, you use your dragons to pick off the workers themselves. Oh, man. Now, here's the problem for Slammer 4 as the game goes on. Remember how we said these dragons, yeah, there's 9 of them, there's a lot, but they can't raid the bases as well defended as they are because of the time that it'll take? Jibs does not have that problem. He just doesn't. And here's the other problem. The supply cap is not in Slammer 4's favor the longer this game goes on. Dragon Mage is stupidly effective. Yes, got it good. Iterated a dozen times. We got it. But it's actually very few units. You know. It's not that many units to work with. If Jibs creates up to 100 supply and he only has 2 dragons, then each one of these guys take 2 apiece. Each dragon takes 5. So by supply, dragons are supply inefficient. These 2 dragons, 10, take up the same as these 5 riflemen, also 10. And those 5 riflemen, equal upgrades will beat these 2 dragons. So in a max versus max scenario, it's actually really, really bad for the player that has a stupid number of dragons. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to see Jibs, because of his army, how much strangely more mobile it is. How it's not able to harass as well, but it's able to attack and kill and deny bases much more effectively. He's going to be able to take out this base, or at least put a lot of pressure on it. Look, this is very smart too. If you're Jibs, dragons have a lot of hit points. If you're not emphasizing them, make 1 or 2 and have them tank the tower. And the tower will take a long time to kill a dragon, and it will not change its target for something else. So the dragons tank the damage, and then all of your riflemen get to the killing of all the things. Again, more intelligence on the part of Jibs for adding these soldiers. Soldiers not only are good for raiding, but they push back the mages. This is the continuation of what we saw for that fight over here by the 3rd. Look, the scorch marks are still here. Oh man, that's bad. But this is a continuation of what we saw back there. The soldiers are able to force back the mages and force the dragons to worry about them instead of worrying about the riflemen that can actually hurt the dragons. Alright, let's see. We just gotta... I'm not going to say that the end is in sight, but the end is pretty bad. I mean, at this point, Jibs is only he's still only about 3,000 ahead in gold. But his army, even though it's not as fast, now has map control. Although they're getting to a situation where the bases are almost completely mined out for everybody, there's just so much more static defense for Jibs, and without the inclusion of soldiers, for the purposes of sheerly leveling buildings, Slammer 4 just can't do it as quickly as this army. There's just no way. He might be able to beat this army, but in a scenario where they're going around each other to kill bases, it's not in his favor. And he can't build the static defense up as quickly as he would like because his army is so expensive. You might say, well, this is dumb. I mean, Etano Circus. If Slammer 4 had just put in the money for fortresses and watchtowers, he'd have been totally fine. Wouldn't have lost this base. Wouldn't have lost the base over here or had it wrecked so many times. And that's a fair thing to say. But you're taking it, I think if you say something like that, you're taking it in isolation. The fact is that the dragons are 250 apiece. The mages are 125 each. If a production rally for Jibs is let's say 7. If a production rally for Jibs is 7 riflemen, a production rally on the same gold, or close enough, for Slammer 4 is 2 dragons and a mage. Jibs can make the executive decision, well, I'm going to make 4 riflemen instead of 7, and I'm going to use the extra 200 to go ahead and build a watchtower. But because of the low unit count that he's working with, Slammer 4 is not similarly capable of saying, oh, I'm going to skip a dragon so I can make the watchtower. There's a nice balance in the force that has to be had. Now we're going to see once again, this fight is going to be in the favor of Slammer 4. He's going to be able to do a lot of damage here because of the mages that he has. But we're also going to see... Ding! The fight starts to go badly when he doesn't have mages. Here are the mages. That's the 3 that we're seeing, right here. These dragons retreated from this fight not because their health was low and not because they couldn't take them, but because there wasn't the unit support for them to take them. Meanwhile, Jibs is just doing a good job putting on pressure. He knows by looking at his own third base. This is a good way to tell if you and your opponent what bases they have. If you can't get a scout, you can get a feel for it. When your base is out, if they took their base at an equivalent time, or roughly, their base is out or should be out shortly. Just looking at his bases. Nice raid, Slammer 4. just looking at his bases, Jibs can see that this base is up, and this base has almost no time left. That means that Slammer 4 should have a base that's kind of up, like that. It's this one for Slammer 4 because he took this base instead of this one. I mean, if he were the true polar opposite of Jibs, when Jibs took this one, he would have been the guy that took this one. But he didn't. He took the base that was over here instead for his 4th. So this base and this base are roughly equal. So Jibs knows that there's at least one base economy. And as he's running out now, Jibs knows that either he is massively ahead in terms of gold, or this base is also mined out. But since he's been putting on pressure and you just saw his army run through all of it, safe to say he knows that he's ahead by the amount. Now we are in a true base race fashion. I wish we could just speed it up a little more, but because Slammer 4 can no longer establish a base. He just can't. This is the only base that he has, and the only base that he can mine from. But even though he was winning every single fight, even though he was wiping out entire armies with his armies, the game has just gotten to the point where the efficacy of the units is still in his favor, but not so badly as it was earlier. His army currently consists of dragons doing the damage, and the mages only do 6 damage. So against these fully upgraded 5/5 units, they're only heal flame strike support. They do literally nothing else. The dragons are the only scary damage dealing part of the army. And every pickoff, like we just saw there, of a mage is something Slammer 4 can't afford. Look at his money. We're just gonna sit. Look how slow the rate of income is for both of these players. In a direct fight, this can't win as it stands now with only one mage against this. There's just no way. Assuming even that the mage doesn't get picked off and then the fight ends from there, there's not enough heal. There's not enough flame strike. There's not enough to dispossess the riflemen. Is dispossess a word? There's not enough to push the riflemen away from their position. And Jibs, meanwhile, has just been keeping safe. He's going to hold on to this base. If Jibs can hold on to this base, he wins. And all he has to do to hold on to that base is park this army right here. We're going to see this through to the conclusion, just so you can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's about it. So things to think about. If both players open up dragons, you have the decision. You can either decide that dragons will be an integral part of your army, like Slammer 4 did. If you decide this, then your dragons have to be constantly around the map harassing workers. If you see a watchtower up or going up, don't attack the watchtower, attack the workers. And you might consider getting mages to go with your army, because they dramatically increase the efficacy of your units, of your dragons. They have heal, which disproportionately favors the dragons because of their high hit points. The dragons, they stack incredibly well with armor upgrades because of the number of times that they register that defense of armor because of how high their hit points are. And you might think about such things as how you're going to maybe adding a few soldiers in, either for harass or for a siege. Because you have to think about how, if you're making dragons an integral part of your army, maybe add catapults, which we didn't see much of this game, or any of. There's a workshop, we didn't see any. Or consider adding soldiers so that you can burst down towers. Or you can harass in locations that aren't with your dragon-intensive army.